What would you do if Whitney Houston walked into your church wedding and stopped everything on May 15th, 1988? That's exactly what happened to two strangers at New Hope Baptist Church in Newark. What she did next wasn't just unexpected. It became the most magical moment in that church's 150-year history. And 35 years later, their grandson revealed why that one moment changed three generations of their family forever. If this incredible story moves you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss these untold stories of music's greatest legends. It was a Sunday afternoon in Newark, New Jersey, and New Hope Baptist Church was filled with its usual post-service quiet. The morning congregation had gone home for Sunday dinner, and the sanctuary was peaceful except for the soft sound of someone practicing piano in the back room. Whitney Houston was in town visiting her mother, Sissy, who had been the church's music director for over 2 decades. Whitney had just released her second album and was at the absolute peak of her career, but she never forgot where her voice was first nurtured. What nobody knew was that in the small chapel adjacent to the main sanctuary, something much more intimate was taking place. A young couple, James Martinez and Maria Santos, were about to get married. They weren't wealthy, they weren't famous. They were just two kids in love who had saved every penny they had to afford a simple ceremony at the church where Maria had grown up singing in the choir. James was 26 years old, a mechanic from the Bronx who worked double shifts to support his mother and younger sister. Maria was 24, a nursing student with dreams bigger than her circumstances. They had $400 to their name, and they'd spent $200 of it just to rent the small chapel for their ceremony. There was no organist available, no choir, no fancy arrangements, just a simple room with 15 wooden pews, a modest altar, and Pastor Williams, who had baptized Maria when she was 7 years old. Maria's grandmother Rosa had driven down from Hartford to be there. James had invited his best friend Marcus from the garage where he worked. This wedding was supposed to be quiet, simple, and heartfelt. Get married, take a few photos with Maria's old Polaroid camera, and head to the community center for cake with a handful of family members who could afford to attend. But something was missing, and both James and Maria felt it deeply. Whitney had finished visiting with her mother and was walking through the church hallway when she heard something that stopped her in her tracks. It was the sound of someone crying, not the happy tears you hear at weddings, but the kind of tears that come from deep disappointment. She followed the sound to the small chapel, where she saw a young woman in a simple white dress that looked like it had been her grandmother's. The woman was standing at the altar holding a small bouquet of carnations, and she was whispering to a young man in a pressed but clearly secondhand suit. "I'm sorry, James," Maria was saying, her voice breaking. "I know how much you wanted to give me a real wedding with music and everything beautiful. I know you've been working extra hours trying to save money for an organist, but this is enough. You're enough. Our love is enough." Whitney felt her heart clench. Those words took her right back to her own childhood, watching her mother stretch every dollar to make Christmas special, seeing the look in Sissy's eyes when she had to tell young Whitney that some things would have to wait. That's when Whitney Houston made a decision that would change 4 lives forever. She took a deep breath and stepped into the chapel doorway. Pastor Williams looked up first, his eyes widening in recognition. Then James and Maria turned around, startled by the interruption. For a moment, nobody spoke. Maria's hand flew to her mouth. James stood frozen, still holding Maria's hands in his. "Excuse me," Whitney said softly, her voice carrying that unmistakable warmth that had comforted millions. "I couldn't help but overhear, and I hope you'll forgive me for intruding. But did I hear correctly that you two are about to get married?" Maria nodded, unable to find her voice. This was Whitney Houston, the Whitney Houston, standing in their small chapel in her elegant Sunday dress, looking at them with genuine concern and kindness. "And let me guess," Whitney continued, stepping further into the chapel, "you're doing this without music because you can't afford an organist or a soloist." James found his voice first. "Miss Houston, we don't want to bother you. We know who you are, and we're just regular folks. We're grateful to have family here and Pastor Williams to marry us. That's more than enough." Whitney smiled, and it was like sunshine filling the small room. "You know what? You're absolutely right. Love is enough. But here's the thing. My mama Sissy raised me in this church. I learned to sing right down that hallway in the children's choir, and she taught me something important. When God gives you a gift, you use it to bless others. The silence that followed was profound. Pastor Williams was staring. Maria was crying again, but these were different tears. James looked like he might faint. If you'll have me, Whitney continued, I'd be honored to sing at your wedding, because every bride deserves to walk down the aisle to music, and every groom deserves to see his bride's face light up with joy. Maria finally found her voice. You want to sing at our wedding? Honey, Whitney said, walking closer to them, I don't want to, I need to. See, my mama always told me that the voice God gave me isn't just mine. It belongs to anyone who needs to hear it, and right now you two need to hear it. What happened next became legendary at New Hope Baptist Church. Whitney Houston, one of the biggest stars in the world, walked to the front of that small chapel. She didn't ask for a microphone. Her voice didn't need amplification. She didn't ask for a piano. Her voice was instrument enough. She simply positioned herself near the altar and nodded to Pastor Williams. All right, Pastor, let's get these two beautiful people married. The ceremony began. Pastor Williams, who had performed hundreds of weddings, found his hands shaking slightly as he opened his Bible. This was Whitney Houston, the girl he'd watched grow up in this church, now a global superstar, standing in his chapel ready to bless a young couple's marriage. James held Maria's hands, both of them trembling, not from nerves about getting married, but from the surreal beauty of what was happening. Rosa sat in the front pew, tears streaming down her face, whispering prayers of gratitude in Spanish. Marcus kept blinking, certain he was dreaming. When Pastor Williams got to the vows, something magical happened. Instead of the traditional exchange, he looked at Whitney and nodded. She understood immediately. James, Whitney said, her voice gentle but powerful, repeat after me. Maria, I promise to love you with the same faithfulness that brought us to this moment. Maria, she continued, repeat after me. James, I promise to believe in our love even when everything else seems impossible. The words they exchanged weren't from any traditional ceremony, but they came from Whitney's heart, inspired by what she'd witnessed. Two people choosing love despite having so little materially. And then came the moment that would be remembered for decades. When Pastor Williams said, "You may kiss the bride," Whitney Houston began to sing. She sang "Greatest Love of All," but she didn't sing it like the record. She sang it like a prayer, like a blessing, like a mother's lullaby for the children this couple would someday have. Her voice filled that small chapel with such power, such emotion, such pure love, that it felt like the very walls were embracing the young couple. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Every word was infused with hope, with faith, with the deep understanding that love, real love, is the foundation of everything beautiful in this world. Maria collapsed into James's arms, sobbing, not from sadness but from overwhelming joy. James held her tight, his own eyes wet with tears he didn't try to hide. Rosa was openly weeping, her hands clasped in prayer. Marcus wiped his eyes with his sleeve, not caring who saw. Even Pastor Williams, who had presided over countless emotional moments, had to pause to collect himself. When Whitney finished the song, she walked over to the newlyweds and took both their hands in hers. James, Maria, she said quietly, what you have is precious. Never let anyone tell you it's not enough just because you don't have money or fancy things. Love like yours is what the rest of us are searching for. She turned to Maria specifically. And honey, I heard you singing along during church service this morning. You've got a beautiful voice. Don't ever stop using it, even if it's just to sing lullabies to your baby someday. Then Whitney reached into her purse and pulled out something that made everyone gasp. A crisp $500 bill, more money than James and Maria had ever seen at one time. This is for your future, she said, pressing it into James's hand. Not for today, not for the reception, for your future. Maybe Maria's nursing school, maybe a down payment on a little house someday, a gift from one family to another. James tried to refuse. Miss Houston, we can't take this. You've already given us so much. Yes, you can, Whitney said with that smile that had graced magazine covers around the world. And you will, because someday when you're settled and happy, you're going to do the same thing for another young couple who needs a little help. That's how blessings work. They keep moving. She hugged them both, kissed Maria's forehead like a big sister would, and then did something that surprised everyone. She walked over to Rosa and embraced her. Abuela, Whitney said in perfect Spanish. Su nieta es una joya. Cuídala bien. Rosa wept even harder, nodding and blessing Whitney in rapid Spanish. Whitney Houston walked out of that chapel as quietly as she had entered. She didn't call any photographers. She didn't mention it to her publicist. She simply did it because, as she told Pastor Williams later, that's what Mama taught me to do. That evening, James and Maria used $50 of Whitney's gift to take their small wedding party to a nice restaurant. Nothing fancy, but nicer than anything they could have afforded on their own. They saved the rest exactly as Whitney had instructed. But here's the incredible part of this story, the part that nobody knew until 35 years later. Whitney's act of kindness didn't just give them a beautiful memory. It changed the entire trajectory of their lives and the lives of everyone they would touch. That night, sitting in that restaurant, James and Maria made a sacred promise to each other. They promised that they would never forget what Whitney Houston had done for them. And they promised that whenever they had the chance, they would do the same kind of thing for someone else. They would look for people who needed a little magic in their lives, and they would provide it, no questions asked. Over the next 3 decades, James and Maria Martinez became known throughout their community as the couple who helped everyone. Maria finished nursing school and became a pediatric nurse, often singing Whitney Houston songs to comfort sick children. James opened his own garage and regularly fixed cars for free for single mothers and elderly people who couldn't afford repairs. They paid for strangers' groceries. They helped young couples with wedding expenses. They donated to every charity that came their way. They opened their home to people who needed a place to stay during tough times. Their children grew up watching this behavior and adopted it themselves. Their grandchildren learned the same values. The ripple effect of what Whitney Houston did in that chapel on May 15, 1988, spread across 3 generations. But James and Maria never told anyone the full story. Not their children, not their friends, not even their own pastor. They kept Whitney's kindness as their own private treasure, something sacred between the two of them and God, until 2023. On May 15, 2023, exactly 35 years after their wedding, James and Maria's family threw them a huge anniversary party. Their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren all gathered at the same New Hope Baptist Church where they'd been married. It was a beautiful celebration of a marriage that had lasted through everything. James's heart attack in 1995, Maria's breast cancer in 2008, the loss of their eldest son in Iraq, financial struggles, health scares, and all the challenges that test a marriage over 3 decades. During the celebration, their grandson Michael stood up to give a speech. He talked about his grandparents' generosity, their kindness, their unwavering love for each other and for everyone around them. I never understood where Abuelo and Abuela learned to be so giving, Michael said. They always just said it was the right thing to do, that God blessed them so they could bless others. But last month, while helping Abuela clean out some old photo albums, I found something that made everything make sense. Michael pulled out a faded Polaroid photograph. It was blurry and amateur, but there, clear as day, was Whitney Houston standing next to James and Maria in that small chapel, her hand on Maria's shoulder, all 3 of them beaming. On the back of this photo, Michael continued, his voice shaking with emotion, were 4 words in Abuela's handwriting. The day Whitney saved us. The room went completely silent. Some people gasped. Others leaned forward to get a better look at the photograph. So I asked Abuela about it, Michael said, and she told me a story I'll never forget. Maria stood up, now 59 years old, her hair silver but her eyes still bright with the same joy from her wedding day. James, 61 and using a cane after his recent knee surgery, stood beside her. And for the first time in 35 years, they told the complete story of what Whitney Houston had done for them. The church fell silent except for the occasional gasp or sob. When they finished, Pastor Williams, now in his 80s but still sharp, stood up. I was there, he said simply. I married them that day. I watched Whitney Houston turn a simple ceremony into something holy, and I watched this young couple take that blessing and spend the next 35 years passing it on to everyone they met. After the anniversary celebration, the story spread. Michael posted about it on social media, and it went viral within hours. News outlets picked it up. Whitney Houston fan sites shared it. Music historians researched it. Former members of New Hope Baptist Church came forward with their own memories of that day. The church organist, now retired, said, "I remember coming in for evening service and finding the small chapel filled with this incredible energy. People kept talking about Whitney Houston being there, but I thought they were exaggerating. Now I know they weren't." Maria's cousin Carmen, who had been invited but couldn't afford the gas money to attend, said, "Maria called me that night crying and laughing at the same time. She kept saying, 'Whitney Houston sang at my wedding. Whitney Houston sang at my wedding.' I thought the excitement had made her delusional. I never dreamed it was true. But for James and Maria Martinez, it was never just a story. It was the foundation of everything they became." In a final interview Maria gave to the local newspaper in 2023, she was asked what she would say to Whitney Houston if she could see her again. Maria smiled, that same radiant smile from her wedding day. "I would tell her that she didn't just sing at our wedding that day. She taught us how to live. She showed us that when you have something beautiful, whether it's a voice or money or just kindness, you share it with people who need it." She paused, her eyes filling with tears. "I would tell her that, because of what she did, we spent 35 years trying to be a little bit like her. Every time we helped someone, every time we gave when we didn't have much to give, we thought about that day. We thought about Whitney standing in that chapel, singing with all her heart for an audience of 5 people who couldn't pay her a penny." Maria continued, "I would tell her that her voice didn't just make beautiful music that day. It made a beautiful life possible for us and for everyone we've been able to help since then." The story of Whitney Houston and the Martinez wedding is more than just a heartwarming tale. It's a reminder of what true generosity looks like. It's not about grand gestures for the cameras. It's not about getting credit or recognition. It's about seeing a moment where you can make a difference and choosing to act, even when nobody's watching. Whitney Houston never publicized what she did that day. She never mentioned it in interviews. She never used it to boost her image. She simply did it because, as she learned from her mother, Sissy, it was the right thing to do. Today, the small chapel where Whitney Houston sang for James and Maria Martinez is still part of New Hope Baptist Church. There's now a small plaque on the wall that reads, "In memory of Whitney Houston, who reminded us that the greatest love of all is the love we share with others." May 15th, 1988. Every young couple who gets married in that chapel hears the story. Many of them request that greatest love of all be played during their ceremony, not knowing the full significance of that choice. The impact of what happened in that small room on May 15th, 1988, lives on in 3 generations of the Martinez family, in the countless people they've helped over the years, in the sick children Maria comforted with Whitney's songs during her nursing career, and in everyone who hears this story and decides to do something kind for a stranger. Because that's what Whitney Houston taught us that day. The greatest love of all isn't just believing in yourself, it's using your gifts to help others believe in themselves too. James and Maria Martinez, now in their 60s, still volunteer at New Hope Baptist Church. They still help young couples planning weddings. They still believe that everyone deserves a little magic in their lives, and sometimes late at night when the church is quiet, Maria will stand in that small chapel and sing Greatest Love of All, not for an audience, but as a prayer of gratitude for the day Whitney Houston reminded them that love, shared generously, never runs out. It only grows. If this incredible story of Whitney Houston's secret act of kindness moved you, make sure to subscribe for more untold stories of music's greatest legends. What's the most unexpected act of kindness someone has shown you? Share your story in the comments below. Let's spread the love that Whitney taught us that day.